Three, two, one.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter. If you celebrate it, Merry Christmas. If today is not your day, Happy Holidays. I hope you're all staying safe out there during this holiday season. I've got a review here for everyone for Wonder Woman 1984, which is the latest DC offering, directed once again by Patty Jenkins, written by her and DC. I'd probably say DC just Superman almost at this point. In Jeff Johns, who you've known for multiple DC stories and runs. The most recently being, or one of the most recent being Doomsday Clock, which will factor into my thoughts on the film. So, okay, if you have not listened to the podcast before, first off, welcome. If you've listened to the podcast for amount of time, you understand that I have had a very, I'll be kind and call it tumultuous, relationship with DC on the live action front. Their animated stuff, while there have been some misses more recently in the last 5 years or so, DC is in a class all by itself when it comes to their animated stuff, for the most part at least. This film, I was really concerned heading in this movie just because sequelitis is a thing. And something that OJ, as he's been on the podcast before, has even says that sequelitis is a thing, especially when it comes to a film that has such an incredible high at first. Almost by default, you have nowhere to go but down. So, was that the case for this movie? So, the movie picks up in 1984. Diana is working at this place where she's going ahead and working with artifacts. And so she but she's working with Kristen Wiig's Barbara, who is again played by Kristen Wiig. And that is kind of where the movie started to lose me a little bit, because the opening scene of this basically shows the mascara ninja warrior, and I thought that I thought that scene in particular is so incredibly well done, because you see Diana as a kid. There's this big obstacle course essentially, and Diana is trying to go ahead and keep up with these Amazons who are older than her. Diana's a kid at this point in the film. She's probably maybe 8 or 9. 9 or 10, I'd say, maybe. But as a kid, you see that fire. You see that inspiration that we see from Diana in the first Wonder Woman film. She is really wanting to set the bar, and not to set the bar, but hell, to be the bar when it comes to everyone around her, and to be that inspiration. And it's the closest DC will probably get to the opening scene of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which honestly I love. It's only maybe a 8-minute scene or so, maybe 10 minutes. But that whole opening scene I thought was so incredibly well done, and I love that. I was like, okay, this is really fun. I dig this. So then we go ahead and go to 1984, and I will say DC, I wasn't around in 1984. I was born in 87, but the way they show Washington DC, it felt more like Vice City than it did Washington DC, because this movie even starts off with this woman getting married on a bridge for some reason, and her having to say, Diana having to save her from falling off said bridge. There are these two young punks who are not street racing, but they're speeding, and they almost run this woman down. But that's on the way for Diana to go to this mall and stop these burglars who one of which ends up dangling a kid off a ledge, which I was sitting there going, what is happening right now? But the the movie in particular, this is such a hard movie for me to grade because there are things that I like, but there are several things, I'll get into these, that genuinely offend me. And I'm gonna say right now, if you do not want any spoilers, I will tell you. I'll give a point in the interview or in the review where I just say it's spoiler heavy from here on out. So I'm gonna try to dance around this a little bit. So, okay, Diana isn't really Wonder Woman too much in the film. This is actually closer paced in that reference to something like Iron Man 3 or Dark Knight Rises. You really don't get a lot of Diana as Wonder Woman until the last 40 minutes, I would say, of the film. So you almost go almost a third really without her being Wonder Woman. And that might be a problem for some people. For me, it wouldn't be a problem if they established Diana more of what we love about her, more of that hopeful, more of that courageous, that independent woman. But the problem with this film is that it's really having an identity crisis. The film itself doesn't really know what it wants to do with Diana because she is the third best actor in this movie. As much crap as I give Chris Pine, and I will say, Mr. Pine, sir, I'm sure you smell fresh, but but Mr. Pine, Chris, this is maybe his best performance since Hell or High Water. Like, he's amazing in this movie, and the way that him and Gal do work together, the way they bring him back, I won't spoil how they do it, but that is kind of one of my issues with the films, that they don't really establish how he's brought back, because he's brought back, but he's not brought back. And maybe if I hadn't just watched Soul, I wouldn't be so like, oh, why are you kind of doing that? But it's something that I definitely noticed, and I went, okay, I don't love that, but I digress. The chemistry between Steve and Diana is there, but again, I think this is where I do have to start criticizing the film. For the first film, I think that's okay, but for this film where we're supposed to learn more about Diana, and it is a sequel, and we should, in theory, be establishing her more because we clearly know Steve Trevor won't be staying. This is a movie that is very directly affected by male characters in terms of the females. And I think that in particular is my biggest issue with it. Every real reaction or motivation is somehow tied to being a man. Kristen Wiig's character, Barbara, she is not just shunned. People hate her ass for no reason whatsoever, except that apparently she wears glasses. And it's one of those things that, yes, is it an 80s trope? Absolutely. I have no problem with people using the 80s to enhance what they're presenting. I mean, Stranger Things has done a great job of that. But when you're a slave to the time that you're setting your film in, that's a really big issue. And there is something that happens later on that I'll get to here that I really found downright offensive, that flat out dropped the film a full letter grade for me. The initial fight between Diana and these burglars, I did actually appreciate, because you do get to see how her power base is kind of improved. You see that she's able to go ahead and, smash a gun in her hands like it's nothing. The way she's able to use angles with the lasso. She uses the lasso quite a bit more in this, and considering that's her main weapon, that's something that, just knowing the character, being a fan of the character, I went, yeah, this actually makes a lot more sense that you're using the lasso more. That was something that was actually a very pleasant surprise. I was like, okay, I really dig this. But then we get to these other things. For Barbara to beat Cheetah, and I think this is my biggest problem overall, for Barbara to beat Cheetah, you need to feel like Diana and Barbara are friends. And the problem is that given the legwork they do, they never feel like friends. Diana always feels like she kind of happens to just keep Barbara around, almost like a almost like a hurt bird or something. It feels like she's almost appeasing uh Barbara than actually being friends with her. And that's a really big issue with this film because Diana, to again quote O to the J, she really does have the superiority complex that the movie never fully checks. And for me to cheer for this hero, because Diana, again, is supposed to be this virtue of truth, the film itself talks about truth quite a bit in this movie. It really makes it feel like truth is the most um, important thing in the world. Hashtag fake news. But they really hammer home how important truth is, and at the end of the day, it never feels like Diana finds hers independent from Steve. And again, that goes back to my point of I think that this is basically DC's version of PS I Love You, where as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, this is a dash of PS I Love You, and it starts off being at points almost a homage to the original Superman film, but while it starts off as Superman 1, it ends up being Superman 3. And at the end of the day, that's the biggest problem with this movie. And I know some people will definitely dispute that and say, this is the best thing ever. Oh my God, how dare you? It's better than Batman. It's better it's better than Dark Knight. But you'd be lying to yourself if you think that. This is just all over the place. And I know some people, because I read some reviews on this, that some people were saying that they didn't like the first third. I really enjoyed the first I'd say 10 minutes of this movie, and then after that is kind of where it starts to meander a little bit. So of course Pedro Pascal is in this movie, as well as Maxwell Lord, Donald Trump. And let's be clear, Pedro Pascal is having probably the best year of his career. Between Mandalorian season 2, which I have not finished yet, I know, I suck. But between that and this, Pedro Pascal is my favorite part in this movie. He plays this just hammy enough that it really does hit for me. But then when the serious moments do come, those serious beats, he's such a great actor that he's able to carry those, and you feel the weight of what he's saying. He is a con man. He is a terrible father. He is someone you're not supposed to cheer. But when he starts to go ahead and use a stone and goes ahead and uses it for his own nefarious gains, I remember really thinking, okay, this is something I can get behind. And the stone itself is so the mythos that they attach to it in a very short amount of time. Yes, it is very it's very heavy in exposition when they lay everything out, but Diana has this look of fear on her face when you kind of find out the history of the stone that I thought was so so well done. And I absolutely love that aspect of it. The way they kind of set up the MacGuffin here, I think works really well. Going back to something else that I really was not a fan of, there's this scene where Barbara is walking home. And this is something I talked about with Birds of Prey, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. I understand that men can be incredibly shitty. Do not misunderstand. I admit men can be terrible. But it's almost like Barbara basically has to go through sexual assault, sexual assault, like walkway, essentially, because all these guys are catcalling, hey baby, hey sexy, what's going on? This is like at the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere in this fucking park. So I found that very hard to believe, to be honest. I'm sure it happens, or it's happened, but just the way that was done, I was like, I don't love that, and I think that's a little far-fetched. The thing too, though, is that when this incredible piece of shit tries to sexually assault Barbara, Diana goes ahead, lays his ass out. Good job, as well she should have. But the issue I have is that they just leave him there. They just, Diana just knocks him down, and he's, on the sidewalk, squirming, oh, and they don't take him to jail or anything. I mean, she's a fucking witness. They could go ahead and go, hey, he was trying to sexually assault my friend. And then Diana doesn't even walk her home. And that was something I was like, well, okay, so you'll save her, but you won't close the loop? Like that was something I found incredibly selfish on her part. That really, for me, does not fit the character at all that has been established in the first Wonder Woman, which I think is incredibly unfair, not just to Gal, but to the audience as well, considering what we know about this character and how you really set that up. Um, Going through other stuff here, the cinematography in this film is incredibly well done. While I do have issues, as I've laid out some already, it it's a very pretty movie. The aesthetic of it, it uses the 80s neon colors and stuff like that. I think it uses that very well. I love the way that the new Wonder Woman costume looks. It's way heavier on the brightness of the gold and red. I really like that because it really makes it stand out from, I think the costumes have gotten way too dreary over at DC. Like these comics are supposed to be celebrations of these characters, and I'm really happy that they actually leaned that they leaned into that more. Um, as I mentioned, the way they bring back Steve Trevor, but don't bring back Steve Trevor, that's something that I won't go into that because I don't want to spoil it. But that was something I was like, okay, I don't love the way you're kind of wrapping this up, but okay, fine. There's a scene, and I'm gonna kind of maybe make this my last point because I really don't. I want people to discover this movie as much for themselves as possible, even though I am pointing out many critiques. There is a scene where they go to Egypt, and this is something that immediately knocked this movie down significantly by the second for me. There's this point where Maxwell Lord goes to Cairo to get some oil rights from this this guy whose magical wish is for him and for him to regain his ancestral lands and to cast out all these heathens. So that already, I'm like, okay, you're on very flimsy territory right now. You should stop right now. But then there's this fight, this long, pretty drawn out road chase where Diana and Steve are trying to take down this private Egyptian security force, which, if you heard that right, that means that Diana messes with a bunch of Egyptians with vehicles that are conveniently, very clearly marked with Arabic blaze that then go ahead and explode. Then she saves a couple kids by speaking Arabic to them, who look upon her like she might as well be fucking Jesus. Well, God is a woman, but just look on her like they would worship her and bow at her feet right there before Diana gets them back to her mom, because of course, the mother, who is dressed and clothed head to toe in all black. The symbolism there, I will let you read in that for yourselves, but what the film is portraying and showing in that scene is downright irresponsible. And it's one of those things where I go, Gal being an Israeli actress who already gets trolled anyway, why would you have her beat up a bunch of faceless but clearly Arab men in a film that takes place in 1984, which, if you follow your actual timelines, would put that 2 years after Israel invaded Lebanon, which I have to point out again, the original Wonder Woman was banned because of Gal's nationality. Who did that? Who thought that was a good idea? It's such a bad idea. And it really is irresponsible on the part of DC. The fact of the matter is, for all those people who work at that company, the fact no one went, hey, this is pretty offensive, we should probably not put this in here. It doesn't really add anything to the movie. Actually, the movie would probably flow better if we set this fight scene anywhere fucking else. But no, they just let it go, and that's okay. It's really irritating. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't act like that's a problem, you're being irresponsible in regards to the film, and you're trying to give it a pass. And no, plain and simple, that's something that is incredibly offensive, and something that a lot of people really should have been like, hey, that's really bullshit. And when they do explain Maxwell Lord's backstory, that was something I really just went, that's like, I hate that. And I will be honest, I don't recall if that's how it is in the comics, but that was something that I really just remember thinking, this is bullshit. And I really hate that you're portraying it like that. Outside of that, I have other issues with the film, but to be honest, that's all spoiler stuff, and I don't really want to get into that. I want everyone to try to enjoy this as much as possible without me potentially influencing your thoughts on this. So, getting my final thoughts here, this is it's a disappointing movie because of what we got the first time. And I really have to preface it with that. If this was the first in a trilogy, or the first film in the franchise, let me put it like this. Something like Alita Battle Angel that I did not love, but I really did enjoy. I believe I gave that a B+ or an A-, because I know that film deserves a sequel, and Disney, God help you, make a sequel to Alita. I don't know if I want a Wonder Woman sequel after watching this. If this is what we're going to get for another sequel, I don't want another one. And it makes me really sad to fucking say that. And to be completely honest, to put another layer of sadness to this shit, this could be what Black Panther 2 looks like. And I know people don't want to hear that, but we have to accept the reality that sequelitis is a thing. And let's be real, Gal is still around to play this character. We don't have Chadwick anymore, unfortunately. So this might be a case of maybe they should just not make Black Panther 2. And I've kind of started to grow more and more on the side of that, but I digress. Jeff Johns is a writer on this. Jeff Johns is Mr. DC, as a lot of DC fans portray him as. I just think he's getting stretched too thin at this point. Between Stargirl, I haven't read it yet. OJ read it, Doomsday Clock, which he has issues with. But that was supposed to come out, a year? It was supposed to come out a year earlier, and it got extended to 2 years. Like, he's between Stargirl, between this Green Lantern show that I'm sure he's going to have a big hand in. Jeff Johns is kind of being stretched and pulled in every direction right now. And at some point, he's going to have to pick and choose what's important to him. And I mean, that's just what he's going to have to do. And I don't know how much of this was him. I don't know if Patty had more to do with the script, and maybe he, just kind of contributed a thing here or there. But at the end of the day, for what this movie is, it's so not what I needed this to be. It's not what a lot of us need this to be. It's not that beacon of hope that, fair or not, a lot of people are associating with this film. People were expecting this to save 2020 as far as the film industry, and as far as even people going out to the theaters. But I'm sorry, y'all, this is not that movie. There's a good movie here. This is the closest thing. This is the last thing I'll say. This is like a worse version of Superman Returns. That's the best way I can kind of put it. It felt like there's a story there that would connect with audiences. But for what this is and what they put out, this is not that film. I think if you take Cheetah out of this movie, it actually flows better. Because again, Diana and Barbara aren't given enough time to actually to be friends in order for them to become enemies. Like, if you think about something like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, if they had Bucky become Winter Soldier halfway through First Avenger, it wouldn't hit you nearly as hard as it does when you get to the second film. And this is one of those cases I really think that they needed to go ahead and hold off. Let Barbara be angry at Diana, let that anger build, and then go ahead and have her become Cheetah proper in the third film. I might do a spoiler talk. I'll probably do a spoiler talk for Wonder Woman here, but I will say the mid-credit scene clearly sets up what I think will be the antagonist for the third film, and I'm going to just leave it at that. But as far as my grade, and I've been going back and forth on this, I'm gonna give this a C. I think a C is fair for this movie. C for competent. Because there's stuff about this. Like I said, the cinematography is great. Chris Pine, this is the most Chris Pine's given a shit probably since Into Darkness. But this is just one of those movies that I remember just sitting there going, you should be better. And I really hate that you're not better. As far as a comparison, no, this is not Thor: The Dark World, because I had some people asking, "Oh, do you hate it that much?" No. I didn't hate this movie. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, and that's the best way I can put this. Assuming Patty Jenkins comes back for a third one, which is not a guarantee, considering how Warner Brothers clearly tried to undercut her and underpay her, which is just great fucking job. I hope this isn't Patty Jenkins' last Wonder Woman outing, because she deserves to go on a higher note than this. Yeah, this is just kind of frustrating because you know that this could have been a better film, and what we got was this. So, yeah, it's a C for me. But everyone, Wonder Woman 84, what did you think? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. You can follow us, like our page on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. And then don't forget to like our gaming page. That's Real Pineapple Games. Follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Nearman1. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple and Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, TuneUp, and Amazon Music at The Real Pineapple. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll have reviews up here soon for A Teacher, as well as for Soul. Gonna review that here probably tomorrow. But yeah, we've got more reviews heading down the pipeline. Everyone, please stay safe. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of each other. Wear a mask, and we'll talk to you soon.